Should we kick off?
I'm very excited to hear your intro. So, yeah, I mean, I'm like, let's not stand on ceremony, mate. Let's go.
Right. So today's guest is a bit of a handful in the best way. She's been called a rebel, a grafter, and occasionally a pain in the arse. But that's exactly why people trust her. She's built and
I'd
sold.
say that's a good intro, mate. I'll take it.
Yeah, I think so. She's built and sold 2 businesses, including turning a scrappy consultancy into a 13.3 million exit in just 1,000 days. She's also led some of the biggest public sector projects in the UK, from NHS UK to the COVID home testing app. These days, she's running the Grafter, helping founders grow, raise, and exit, but not with the beige advice you find on LinkedIn. Her team are all Exiteers who've actually done it. Oh, and she's ADHD, in recovery, and never shy of saying what she thinks. Please welcome Rachel Murphy.
Oh my God, I fucking love that intro. I don't know how I'm not going to insist on that intro everywhere I go for the rest of my life, mate.
I thought it was quite fitting for this. So yeah,
It is very fitting, but also you've given me a nice little trick for future people I'm interviewing. So yeah, I will be deploying that tactic on others. I love it.
nice. So you are chatting with me today from Spain.
I am chatting from Spain, yeah, and it's still 24 degrees, 2nd of October, and we went paddleboarding last night after work, and the sea was a tiny bit chilly, but manageable. But being able to extend the working day and kind of do things like that for me is just magic, because after a hectic day, tooling around on a paddleboard is a great way to decompress.
Very, very different from London living.
Very different from London living, yeah, especially at the minute.
So you've been there for about 4 weeks now, I think. And what's the bigger picture with this? What is the significance of the conclusion you're going to reach? Because I know this is more than just, being able to paddleboard after work.
Well, I think firstly, I fucking love London, right? So I have a problem with that. However, I'll caveat that by saying I really, really like having a longer day, and I like weather that enables me to wear shorts every day of the week for as long as humanly possible. So I'm trying to weigh up what is more important at the minute. I miss the energy of London, but I think I'm probably back enough for work. And Yvonne and I chatted last night, my wife, and we're not going to race back to the UK on the 2nd of December. We're going to come back closer to Christmas. And as to what we do longer term, that's undecided. But all I do know is I think I've got a bit of a taste for being on the move, trying different places, and anywhere that's a couple of hours back to London is manageable for me to kind of run the company from. So yeah, I think you can probably expect me popping up in more random locations over the coming months.
I can't wait to see it. So you're back and forth to London still. Whereabouts are you in Spain? And apart from the sunshine, the swims, all of that good stuff, presumably great food, what are you missing that you feel like you would struggle to go without?
So we are not far from Marbella. So we're about an hour from Malaga. And what am I missing? I'm missing the energy of London. I love the lunacy of London. So that's what I would say. But maybe I would get that if I was in a city in Spain. I don't know. But we're on the coast. We're in a holiday kind of place. So if I was in a city, maybe. So I think London energy. But the other thing is banter. Now, I don't speak Spanish, so that is definitely a challenge. But it is the banter. As soon as I come off the flight, and I was at Gatwick last week, I was just chatting to someone in the shop, and it was straight in on banter. You clearly can't do that when you can't speak the lingo. But Yeah, I do like the British banter. It's funny.
Yeah, it's a particular type, I think, of banter and sarcasm as well. There's just like a dry humor, I think, with Brits
Yeah.
that actually the biggest point of difference when I notice it is when I'm dealing with Americans. Because they like, was that your British sarcasm? And I'm like, yes. What? So obviously, like, what do you mean? It's like feels like they just can't pick up. Like there's such a clash there.
It is fun, but I do think we're talking to a lot of Americans at the minute because we're going to take the Grafter overseas, and the bit that I would say is they seem more professional. Maybe most people seem more professional than me, but they seem smarter turned out as well. So yeah, but again, that could just be a personal thing. But I haven't tested the sarcasm bit. I'll need to report back after I've landed a few inappropriate gags at the next meeting to see if see how well they were received.
This is this kind of like the happenings going on towards the US. That's quite a big milestone for you. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we have our first US client at the minute going through Ray's exit, and the US has always been an ambition for me to launch the business into. For a few reasons. One, the market is massive compared to the UK, but also I think the kind of US optimism and buzz and energy is a real draw for me personally. I like that kind of outlook on life. Um, and I think the other bit is, our offer at the minute is around grow, raise, and exit. And we're starting to see the UK market move more around acquire. And we've just completed our first acquisition for a client. And I think that the US is further ahead in acquiring businesses as a growth strategy. And I just think that we can have a lot of fun out there with some of the work that we're doing. But I don't have a burning desire to build from scratch. I want to land with a partner for the US, and that's very much the approach that we're going to take.
Makes sense. And in the US, as I understand, I feel like the government position is quite different. Don't they sort of financially support business deals or like sort of
Much more. So if you're buying companies, the SBA loan scheme will hugely benefit. I mean, the stats are something like 80% of businesses are bought with the SBA loan scheme, and the
wow.
federal government underwrites, and therefore you're needing to find 20%. And to the last time I researched this, I'm not sure the SBA loans has ever gone to recover the money from a personal guarantee as part of that scheme. Now things are changing at the minute with the political landscape over there, but it's still a hell of a lot more compelling offer than some of the stuff we've got going on in the UK, in my opinion.
Mm, quite, yeah, very, very different, especially I think with the direction that things are heading at the moment, which I know is a big part of also you looking at other countries because it's not necessarily going in a good direction for being pro entrepreneurship, I think, in this country.
No, I think I think the Labour government are making it incredibly hard to want to build and scale and hire people and incentivize entrepreneurs to build businesses. I think the front end part, setting up a business in the UK and the digital services to do that is exceptional. But I think as you then go through the growth journey, it's getting harder and harder. And the stats on entrepreneurs leaving the UK is just staggering at the minute.
Yeah, I've heard myself on the ground of businesses paying like an extra, I think it's like the cost going up by like several 100,000 just to sort of stand still, essentially.
Yeah, I mean it's criminal, frankly. So it needs sorting out and rapidly because just hiking up taxes isn't a well-known growth strategy for countries. So let's hope Rachel Reeves is tuning in and having a serious rethink about her current policies.
Fingers crossed. So this is your third business, and you've had two before and two exits, that's quite rare, to say the least. Do you want to just take me through a little bit of that journey?
Yeah, of course. So first company I built in my 20s, and I was working as a project manager at that time, and I was implementing the first web-based social care system for the UK. And I thought this software was great, but I thought that they were going to really struggle just expecting the social workers to implement it and crack on and start using it. I mean, we're going back to nearly 23, 24 years here. So I decided after I'd implemented it in a few places that I was going to build a company, and I was going to become an implementation partner of this software company. And I pitched the owner of the business and said, this is what I was going to do. And he said, no, our software is brilliant. We don't need implementation partners. And I said, okay, well, I'm probably going to crack on, rock up wherever you sell into, and then supply a team to implement. And that's exactly what I did. And we wrote £1 million worth of business in the first year. And then we went on to build a training academy. We built e-learning systems for that software, and then other social care software. And it was really good fun. But I would say that my experience at that time, I was early 20s, was limited in actually building a successful consultancy. I think that I probably believed my own hype a little bit and thought I created a brand. But the common denominator was that a lot of the time I was leading some of the implementation work. And so, it wasn't a brand. It was just someone who was working hard and running multiple jobs. And so that business ran for a number of years, and we sold the assets of that business in my 20s.
I mean, you say like you probably believed your own hype a little bit, but I think writing £1 million of contracts in the first year of your first business in your early 20s is just astoundingly impressive. But B, I think you have to believe your own hype, right? You have to have that absolute naive belief almost. You don't have the skills, but then it sounds like actually the results reflected that you did have something special to offer the market.
I've always been utterly relentless with an idea, and I was exactly the same then as I am now. And so, yes, there was a gap in the market, and I'd spotted it and made it happen. And it was an incredible achievement. But I think the bit that I also knew, and maybe hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I knew I didn't really know how to run a consultancy or to build one. It had happened accidentally to some extent. And so that really was the driver. After I'd sold the assets of that business, I went back and consulted for big public and private sector businesses and big four consultancies for a number of years to really kind of earn my stripes.
That makes sense. Out of interest, I think when you were just talking there about how you learn so much more with hindsight, which is obviously so true. I feel like I learned so much more about my exit in the years afterwards and reflecting on, I guess, the things that were at play that led to that event. Did you feel at all? I mean, it's interesting. You kind of went back into this consultancy, these consultancy roles for a number of years. Did you feel did you feel completely responsible for the exit? Because, and the reason I ask this is because I feel very similarly about my first business and the exit that I had in my early 20s. And it'd gone amazingly well. I'd done all the things, but a bit like you, I felt like I was going after things, but I didn't have the processes. I kind of didn't really know how to do it, even though I was doing it. And so I kind of felt like I did that. I mean, also I was running the whole business on my own, so I definitely did that. But at the same time, there was like this sense of not quite being able to take credit for my own work because I felt like I didn't quite have the experience.
I think what you described there is something I struggled with for years, and I've often heard it called imposter syndrome or whatever it is. And for me, the first time I can remember seeing that was rereading papers I'd written in my A levels, and I thought, "Fucking hell, this is amazing!" And I thought, "How did I write this?" And so I suspect I probably struggled with that for a number of years, and so I struggle with it a lot less now,
Mm.
if I'm totally honest. But um, I think that going through that process, I think I felt like I was playing at it a little bit, like playing, like when we were kids, we used to play like Murphy Corporation, me and my brother, because my dad at that time, he was either working for Gillette or Duracell. He was the MD, might have been GSK, of one of them. And so we always saw him doing calls, and he had this filing system, and we loved playing Murphy Corporation. And I guess for me, I probably thought I was playing at it a little bit for that gig, for the first one.
Yeah.
And I struggled a bit with responsibility, which is a total contradiction, because you're very responsible when you're running a business, because you're hiring people, you've got to deliver. And so, yeah, there's always been a massive contradiction in me, because even today I instinctively say no, 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 I'm not that keen on responsibility, and I'm not, on a lot of levels. But equally, you're building companies, you're employing people, you are delivering millions of pounds worth of services. You've got a shit ton of responsibility. You're kidding
Yeah.
yourself if you
100%.
yeah.
I want to ask you about the Murphy Corporation.
Mhm.
So give me a breakdown of what you guys got up to.
So I am the oldest, and there's 9 years between me and the youngest one, Ross, and 18 months between me and Connor. So it was Connor and I who used to play Murphy Corporation, because Ross wasn't on the scene at that time. And it was like, like old fashioned filing systems. So we would have had a filing cabinet, we would have had papers, we had phones. I remember knowing the STD code and the phone number of hotels that my dad stayed in around the UK, depending on which clients he was seeing. I would know that number off the top of my head.
Okay.
But the Murphy Corporation was probably a bit of a kickback to. There was a game called Post Office that came out when I was much younger, and it was like a post office, and you were selling stuff, and I always wanted it, and I never got it. And I should buy myself some of it now. But anyway, that's by the by. But I Murphy Corporation was my own version of Post Office, based on watching my dad do phone calls with clients, and I was bossing my younger brother around, issuing some orders. So I think it's fair to say that managing came rather naturally.
Amazing. And so it sounds like being around your dad, who had this really high flying career, had quite an impression on you growing up.
Yeah, I would say so. Both my parents, to be honest. Mum is super hardworking, so she retrained as a lawyer when we were kids. So 3 kids under 10. She went to evening school, night school, I think you call it, not evening school, and went to night school over an 8-year period. Trained as a lawyer. She'd been a like legal secretary, and yeah, so I think the work ethic probably comes from her. Not saying my dad isn't hard working, he is. Um, and I think the playing companies definitely comes from him. Uh, I don't know quite where the entrepreneurial bit comes from, because my parents owned, they are entrepreneurial, but later in life. So I don't know. That was just, I don't know. I feel like it's probably always been in me for as long as I can remember, setting up a car washing company at 13, employing my mates. And I remember going out, getting the clients, scheduling who was doing the delivery, having a chat, having a soch. I was 12 or 13, and everyone else was putting a shift in doing the washing, and then I was quality control.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, it was, and I can still remember the names of some of those clients. It's mental. I mean, this is 37 years ago. No, probably 35 years ago.
It would actually be hilarious to be like to get in touch with some of those people and be like, so you know that kid that used to
One
so
of the
you
ladies,
are watching series.
one of the ladies who we did some work for was an actress. She was on. She was either on the Flake advert or the hot chocolate advert. Her name was Mrs. Holt. And so we're going back years. But if she's tuned into this, then yeah, drop me a message. We need a call. You still owe us for that car wash. No, I'm joking.
So I mean, it sounds like you're around a great work ethic, especially from your mom, but obviously you're seeing, I guess, a great level of success. And I think if there's one thing that I have definitely noticed in you, it's that you thrive on a challenge. So I feel like those two naturally go together quite well.
Yep.
And also, you love a laugh, you like people, and really, business is mostly about people. It's kind of like getting in the head of people, understanding their needs, meeting those needs. It's very much people orientated in a big way.
I I totally agree. And people, for me, I absolutely adore. And I love having a laugh and messing around. And I think sometimes that is taken as being not serious about business, which couldn't be further from the truth. So for me, I think the two don't need to be mutually exclusive. I think you can have a good crack, and you can put a shift in and make stuff happen. And creating that environment, be it a community, be it a team, be it a business, working with a client, that energy and excitement is what I absolutely thrive on.
I was going to ask you about your motivations, because I feel like it's another thing that unites both your car washing, hustling, and your like teens with what you're doing now is you get a massive kick out of helping people, right?
Yes, you're absolutely right. So I think that kind of being of service is my reason for being here. Genuinely, I strongly believe that, and I think that will take on lots of different faces over time. For now, it's working, with business owners. But I absolutely think that's yeah, that's why I'm here.
Hmm. And it's not just in business, because I know that you are 11 and a half years sober and you sponsor people, right?
Yeah, the whole nature of being in recovery is that you kind of give back what was freely given to you. And I got sober by asking for help and being shown a different way. And there was a lot of work I had to do as an individual there. And I always say this to people who I sponsor. If this shit doesn't happen by osmosis, you've got to put a shift in. You don't just cruise into a meeting and then that's it. You no longer fancy having a drink. Um, it requires time and effort, commitment, acceptance of who you are. I had to accept who I was. I had to ask for help. And it is without a shadow of a doubt the greatest thing I've ever done in my entire life. It's also one of the hardest because, for whatever reason, and I'm not sure I fully understand it, but for whatever reason, um, I have that kind of addictive tendency. One is not enough. And whatever that phrase is, I think I've just balls that phrase right up. But one is not enough or one is too many. I can't. The point I'm trying to make is there is not enough. When I get going on anything, all bets are off. And I see that show up in lots of different ways. I do see that in work. I'd be lying if I didn't. And I've done a lot of work this year on exactly that, because my default is go, go, go. And I have to put mechanisms in place to prevent me falling into those kind of traps.
Mm.
And so,
Relentlessness is really almost a mask for you're addicted to that thing. You're going at it full force, whether that's work or drink or anything else. It's like there's almost, I don't think you can force relentlessness, if that makes sense. I think there's something in it that's like you're
yep,
taken by the process.
I would agree with that. It's an interesting point that, but I would agree, and I can't I know that of me. No, I was about to say I kind of know that. I know that of me, and it is something I need to, and I do watch. And it can't. I can't be passive with me with maintaining sobriety. It has to sit at the front and center of everything I do,
Mm.
because my brain is wired differently to normal people, in so much as, for whatever reason, I just don't want to, or no, I'm designed a different way. It's not I don't want to. It's all bets are off. Operating in a normal way isn't my default. I'm kind of designed to fuck things up monumentally. And it's incredibly destructive. And I can be incredibly destructive. I certainly could, until I got sober and I asked for some help, and I went on that journey. And yeah, it's fucking hard, but it is so rewarding.
In many ways, I mean, like the destructive impact of alcohol is usually quite plain to see. But I feel like in business, that same unhinged kind of relentlessness, it's rewarded, right? Like your relentlessness probably like directly links into both first exit or your second exit and generally your work ethic.
Yep,
And I feel
agreed.
like it's more challenging to see an issue in that when the rewards, the status, the ego, everything, the financial freedom is all fed by something. And it probably is quite hard to see that being a negative.
It's a fascinating point, and one that I often reflect on. And so my answer to that is that being sober and living sober isn't about not drinking. It's about changing my thinking, and it's about working towards emotional sobriety. And what that really means is actually being able to pick up some of those traits and some of the triggers and see some of those patterns. I can see a mile off because I can feel it in my body when my tendencies, be it work, be it women, be it whatever it is, are heading in the wrong direction. And so I now have a toolkit that I can leverage, day or night, to intercept some of that and to act differently. And what getting sober taught me, it's the polar opposite of how I live my life every day of the week, because it's the complete opposite. It's about acceptance. And it's about, pausing, and it's about creating space. And for somebody like me, Jesus, it's the hardest fucking thing in the world to do, because I'm a million miles an hour. I want everything yesterday. I wanted to get through the steps in fucking 5 minutes. And it's like, don't be ludicrous. None of that is doing it the right way. It's not about reading them out. It's about doing them, feeling them, and feeling, without getting too hippie, that bloody spiritual change off the back of living my life a different way. And for me, sobriety has brought me back to who I always was. I just went off on a fucking rogue tangent because I used alcohol, which worked perfectly for me for a period of time, to way beyond the limits. And something that was very good for me as a coping mechanism for a period. It turned on me, stroke I took it too far. It's hard to work out, is it chicken or egg? The only thing I can sit here and say is, in 11 and a half years, I haven't had any interaction with the place, which was a much more regular occurrence in my younger years.
This is interesting, actually, because I think like one of the key reasons that you speak about this is because it's just one of those topics that's quite taboo. Like I think most people out there, they have this stereotypical image of someone, going into a recovery meeting who's a homeless person on a park bench, right? Who hasn't got their life together. And the reality is that is such a tiny minority. And I think the other thing, aside from destigmatizing it, is that you weren't an everyday drinker. It was you were full on when you drank. I would be good to speak a little bit to that, I think.
Yeah, of course. So the binge drinking bit for me kept me out of recovery for a period, because I debated, can I really be, for a long period of time. But the reality was, once I'd had a drink, all bets were off. And for whatever reason, that, thank God, never turned into every day. Probably because I was incredibly sick the night after a big session. But I do think if I went back and was drinking again, that would be part of my future. So it would all still be to come, if that makes any sense at all. I wouldn't doubt that I would become an everyday drinker if I was, continued to drink. So I kind of view it like levels. I got off that lift at what already felt like a very low level, but I have no doubt it could have gone further. So
when you say all bets are off, paint me a picture of
all bets are off.
Comfortable sharing.
So yeah, I think I could be life and soul. But also I could be there in body and absolutely not in mind. My drinking was blackout drinking, and that led me to dangerous places, dangerous people, dangerous situations. And the reality was, I don't think I understood till I came into recovery that once I'd had one drink, it kicked off, a kind of taste in me that it couldn't be sated. It wasn't, five, like normal people. I see my other half, she'll say, I've had 4 or 5 drinks. I can feel it, that's it. I'm chilling. Like, I can't tell you how much that would never compute in my brain. My brain says I've had a few, must continue until I pass out, black out. And whatever happens during that period of time, I've absolved responsibility, whether right or wrong. That's what happens, and that's why it was so fucking unsafe for me.
Would you remember most of the night, some of the night, or was
I would remember some of the night, but as a general rule, there was a lot of blacking out. And that wasn't a term that I understood properly until I came into recovery. Blacking out isn't passing out. Blacking out is no memory. Your brain has shut down, some of that stuff for whatever reason. But I wasn't the sort of person who would be chilled out on their own at home having a drink. I loved a big audience. I still do. And so I was bloody lively. And, it could have been great fun for the first few hours, but anything could have happened.
Well,
And it frequently did.
and you said that means 11 and a half years. Your sobriety now also means 11 and a half years with not being involved with the police. So there was
Well,
a
I mean, it's not in my usual. I've just had a letter actually about speeding, so you can't escape these things entirely. But I think, in the grand scheme of things, it's hopefully it's sort outable. That is, but yeah, my younger years, I was I was regularly in trouble because I had no real comprehension of what I was up to, and I'd absolved responsibility, and that's fucking dangerous.
Mm,
Life is very, very different now, in a
yeah.
good way.
And I know that now being of service to help others in their recovery is an incredibly grounding experience. I know you get a lot out of that. And I think actually one of the things that really struck me when you were telling me about your experience of sponsoring and so on is that you're actually dealing with, like, you're seeing death on a regular basis, which I don't know why, but it kind of took, like, it shocked me a little bit.
So I think one of the pieces of advice I got when I first came in was get yourself a suit. And I thought those cheeky bastards think that I'm scruffy. And they would be right. But what they were referring to was get yourself a suit because you're going to be going to a lot of funerals. And I hadn't fully understood just how powerful that was going to be, and just what a reality that was going to be. So I would dread to think, in the last 11 and a half years, how many people I've known in recovery who, for whatever reason, haven't um, remained alive. And that isn't always saying they've drank and gone back out, but a large percentage do drink and go back out. And the problem for um, people like me, alcoholic types, is that it tends not to end in a particularly great way. I buried my best mate, who was also my first sponsor, um, last April. And
Jeez.
it was one of the fucking hardest things I've ever done in my entire life because Phil, I loved him a lot. So he was my first sponsor. I didn't realize he was still drinking at the time. I probably should have done. But we became best mates. He worked for my last company. And the bit that really fucks me off about that is he helped so many people get sober and he couldn't get and stay sober himself. And watching him drink himself to death was one of the most harrowing things I've ever seen in my entire life. And I have some acceptance now around the fact that he is where he wants to be. He struggled with life. He struggled being here. But fuck me, I miss him. Yeah.
Incredibly. Can't even imagine going through that, but I have had the experience of friends and people close to me, and I think it's obviously insanely difficult seeing someone that you care about destroy themselves. But I think the hardest thing almost about it is not being able to control that outcome.
It
But
is.
what you want is to be able to control that outcome.
And desperately. And you want them to get the message, hear the message, do the work. And control is the one thing that all alcoholics wrestle with every minute of every day. And it's really heartbreaking. But I guess I am reconciled to the fact he's no longer with us. I'm gutted because he was such a fucking good laugh. I remember at the last company, we'd taken these offices in Chiswick, and me and Phil were in the office, and we were upstairs. It was like a mezzanine office, and we had this hard house on from the 90s, and we were like raving. It was the middle of the day, like a pair of lunatics up there. Um, I'd like to stress we're both sober, albeit the dancing was so bad you could have mistaken it for being pissed. But that was just Phil. He was really, really good fun, massive heart, incredible hugger, and yeah, I miss him. I miss him immensely.
I can imagine. What role did he play in different? And did you? So you, he was your first sponsor, and then you ended up having this business relationship together afterwards.
Yeah, he was first sponsor, but at the point it was obvious he was still drinking. He had to be traded in. And we then became mates. His story was very tricky. It was a hard story, you know. He was homeless after that period. I didn't see him for years. You know, he was a rugby player, and then the next time I see him, he walks into the room and he's like, if he was 8 stone, I'd be surprised. Barely recognised him. I think my exact words were, "Fuck me, I thought you were dead." And then he was back in the rooms and he was in recovery again, but he just couldn't stay stopped. And that was the problem for Phil. He was one of the smartest people I've ever met. And sometimes that intellect with recovery is hard because you want to know how it works. And you almost think you're smart enough to manage it yourself. And the reality is, none of us are. You know, we need the connection. We need that spiritual experience. We need to learn a different way of life. And that comes through humility. It doesn't come through arrogance and ego. And unfortunately, when people are still drinking, they are awash with both of those traits.
And drinking, I'm guessing that there must be, obviously, like there's a number of reasons that people drink, but it's a masking thing to a degree, right? So there is something underlying for most people, would you say?
I would say so. And I think it's hard to know sometimes quite what it is. And it is it becomes a solution. You know, it's a friend. It's a coping mechanism, and it works for a period of time, and it works until it doesn't. And therein lies the kind of mystery of it all. But I couldn't articulate to you today, you know, why I drank. I don't. I have some ideas, I guess. But I probably confidence when I was younger would have been a lot lower than it is now.
Mm.
Um, but I couldn't really tell you exactly what it was, and I couldn't equally tell you when it went from um, being a social drinker to it being something else. I suspect for me that would have been quite early, but I don't know. And part of, I guess, being in recovery is um, accepting to a certain extent that we don't have all those answers and believing in a power greater than ourselves. And that's the ask. And kind of having that faith is hard work, because that's the bit when I say there's work to do. You don't sashay into a meeting, get hit over the head with a fucking magic wand, and they're like, right, go and be like a proper drinker now. It's different to that.
Having the answers as to why isn't a prerequisite to being able to embrace recovery.
I think a lot of people can get hung up on trying to find the bloody answer and miss the opportunity that's laid out in front of them. Yeah, that's just not a path I wanted to follow.
Well, well, thank you for sharing that. Must have been quite a difficult thing to share. Someone so close to you passing away in that way. But I also guess that he wasn't just like a sponsor and a friend, but he was almost a peer. And I think it's difficult to see people who've had some parallels in life because it feels so close to home, right?
Yeah, it does. And I think, the intelligence bit, he was so fucking smart. And that was the bit that, I kind of, I wanted to shake him. And just, why when you're that smart, can't you get it? But it's his journey was his journey. And I feel strongly that he will be at peace now. And that's what he wanted. And so I don't get to control the outcome of that. I wish in a way I could. And I wish he was still here. But that was his journey, not mine.